Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into the absolutely immense historic legacy of the 32nd President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We usually picture this monumental figure guiding a nation through its darkest hours. But to truly understand the leader, we really have to look closely at exactly how he was made.
To grasp the sheer scale of his impact, you honestly just need one number: 4. He is the only United States president to have ever served more than 2 terms, winning a total of 4 consecutive elections. It's a political feat that remains completely unequaled, and it forever changed the fabric of the executive branch.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the unprecedented president, his privileged upbringing, marriage and complications, the political arena, and finally, his naval service and ambition.
All right, let's jump right into part 1. The unprecedented president, an unequaled legacy.
We begin by looking at the sheer scale of his historical footprint to understand exactly why his background matters today. From 1933 to 1945, his terms were defined by successfully navigating 2 of the most devastating global crises of the entire 20th century. We're talking about combating the paralyzing economic collapse of the Great Depression and leading right through the existential threat of World War II. He essentially reshaped the American government. But where exactly did he get the tools to do all of this?
That brings us to part 2, a privileged upbringing, the cosseted aristocrat.
So how did this famous champion of the working class actually begin his life? Well, spoiler alert, it was definitely not in the breadlines. Growing up completely insulated on his family's Springwood estate in Hyde Park, New York, and taking frequent trips to Europe, his early milestones reflect a life of immense privilege. He was homeschooled before entering the ultra-exclusive Groton School in 1896, graduated from Harvard College in 1903, and passed the New York bar by 1907. By all accounts, it was the life of a cosseted aristocrat. Now, what's really interesting here is how this privileged path was deeply shaped by 3 specific figures. First, his fiercely devoted mother, Sarah Roosevelt, who essentially micromanaged his environment. Second, Endicott Peabody, his headmaster at Groton, who heavily preached the duty of public service. And third, his 5th cousin, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore's vigorous, reform-minded presidency served as Franklin's ultimate role model.
Yet, despite his elite Harvard pedigree, he didn't exactly revere the academic establishment. He famously, and kind of humorously, quipped, "I took economics courses in college for 4 years, and everything I was taught was wrong." He recognized early on that real-world leadership required adaptability, a mindset that would absolutely drive his highly experimental New Deal policies decades later.
Let's move on to part 3, marriage and complications, a powerful partnership. Let's transition into his personal life, specifically his 1905 marriage to his 5th cousin, once removed Eleanor Roosevelt. Early on, their personalities were a stark contrast. Franklin was self-assured and completely at ease navigating upper-class society. Eleanor, on the other hand, was initially shy, deeply insecure, and focused almost entirely on her husband's career. So, what happens when a major romantic fracture alters a marriage like this? Well, the dynamic shifted dramatically in 1918 when Eleanor discovered Franklin's ongoing affair with her own social secretary, Lucy Mercer.
Looking strictly at the historical facts of the aftermath, a divorce was actually on the table. But Sarah Roosevelt vehemently objected to it, and Lucy Mercer refused to marry a divorced man with 5 children anyway. So an agreement was reached, and the marriage fundamentally shifted into a powerful, pragmatic political partnership. It's worth noting that Franklin eventually broke his promise, resuming correspondence with Mercer by 1941, and there was also an alleged affair with his private secretary, Missy Leehand.
For Eleanor, this betrayal was a massive catalyst. She established a separate home at Valkill, getting away from the main estate, and dedicated herself to independent political and social causes. This perfectly illustrates how she found her own powerful voice, which ended up becoming a massive political asset to Franklin's administration down the line.
Okay, part 4, the political arena, entering the fray. The really crucial point here is understanding how he transitioned from a somewhat unenthusiastic lawyer into a strategic, rebellious politician. In 1910, he ran for the New York State Senate in heavily Republican Dutchess, Columbia, and Putnam counties. It seemed like a long shot, but he leveraged his personal wealth to fund a rare, aggressive campaign by automobile. And you know what? It worked. He won a surprising victory during a broader Democratic landslide. Once he got into office, he didn't just sit quietly in the background. He quickly made waves. He led a group of insurgents to actively fight the powerful Tammany Hall machine that controlled his own party in the state. He also backed Woodrow Wilson over his own cousin Theodore in 1912. Plus, as chair of the Agriculture Committee, he pushed progressive farm and labor bills that directly foreshadowed his later New Deal policies.
Which leads us to Part 5, Naval Service and Ambition, Preparing for War.
His bold support for Woodrow Wilson earned him a crucial appointment as Assistant Secretary of the Navy from 1913 to 1920, and he absolutely thrived in this role. He implemented merit-based promotions, extended civilian control over the military, and worked hands-on to fairly resolve labor disputes. He was essentially gaining highly valuable wartime management and union relations experience that would serve him tremendously decades later.
Impartially noting the historical record, his time there was also marked by the discriminatory practices of the era. In 1916, he executed a departmental order designating separate toilets by race and gender. This was met with immediate objections from civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, and the order was rescinded a month later. It's a stark reminder of the complex realities of the time.
To wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves, how did this incredibly unique blend, an insulated aristocratic privilege, a complex marriage, early political rebellion, and hands-on naval experience perfectly forge the leader who would go on to conquer the Great Depression and World War II? Without these exact formative fires, would FDR have ever developed the steel required to reshape the modern world? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the history that built our present.